Surely.
So, again, to set the context, everybody knows that the Indian pharmaceutical industry is very large. And after IT, which is our biggest export, the pharmaceutical industry is responsible for a large amount of exports. But I do want to set the context, right? So, sir, let's talk about numbers first. How large is the Indian pharmaceutical industry today?
So it's really large. In numbers, it's around $55 billion. And it's 26 billion India.
Oh, wow.
And 26 billion exports.
So there is this perception that India's pharmaceutical industry is primarily a generic manufacturing industry that exports to places like the US, Europe, and primarily to the US. But actually, it's inward looking as well. There's a large amount that of business is generated here.
Absolutely. And talking about generic industry, I think for us as a country, I think that was the first big step we took as a country. A couple of decades back, we looked at generics in a very global, kind of a footprint. And we reached where we reached today.
So I must confess that the first time I came across this term, I had no clue what it was. And to everybody tuning in from home, if you don't understand what a generic pharmaceutical is, there is no harm in that. So I'm going to ask the chief executive officer of a very large pharmaceutical company to explain to you what this is. And this is important for you to understand, right? So what is a generic and why is it important?
A generic product is a product that is mimicked basis on the innovator product.
Let's talk about an example, sir. That will make it easy.
Like, for example, if a brand is ABC, I don't want to name brands, it treats a particular disease. There's a patent life for that brand. So the companies start working on this product, exactly mimic, make sure it works in the same way because there are multiple tests that are done, analytical test, bioequivalence test, and you have to show equality with that of the brand.
Yes.
Once that is set, there's a filing. Based on the filing, if the regulators find that this product matches all the ways and they have questions are answered, then they give approval for a generic drug.
So for example, when you have a fever, you take a paracetamol. Paracetamol essentially was made by somebody right at the beginning, and then you have a drug that is named with a name that ends with in or that rhymes with bolo, and effectively those are generics of paracetamol, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so right now, would it be fair to say that the Indian pharmaceutical industry is primarily known as a generic manufacturer?
I would say that generic business is the core business for India.
Sure.
So job of the country is to protect the core.
Yes.
But I would say that the growth is going to come from other areas.
And those other areas are making new drugs and challenging the edge of the unknown. As this entire forum is named, you're venturing into paths that are uncharted. You're creating drugs that will save lives. Why is this difficult? Is it the capital? Is it the lack of ability, the lack of talent?
Let me first set the context a little bit. So you have generics, then the major growth is going to come from biologics, biosimilars.
So this sounds like complete Latin and Greek to me. So you said, okay, generic is a copy of something, right?
Yes.
It's the exact formulation. Matlab, if the formulation is A, B, and C, you're matching A, B, and C. A biosimilar could be X, Y, and Z, which is performing the same task as A, B, and C. Is that the way to look at it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So as India, we're venturing into biosimilars and biologics.
Yes, but biosimilar, biologics, and the new area for our growth is, personalized medicine. If you would have heard, there's cell therapy, gene therapy, tremendous promise for the country, and India can play a very big role in biosimilars, in cell and gene therapy, and in complex injectables, complex tablets. I think these are the three major growth areas. The next big growth in the next decade is going to come from these three areas.
But what's the challenge, sir? Is there a large amount of capital that is required? Because so the way that the perception is that there are companies globally that specialize in creating these new formulations, and they're known for that, right? Everybody knows these names. Why is an Indian company not in that list?
I think last 5 years, government has supported a lot in regulations. Because of that, you see now there's a biologic that's going to be, coming in the market. It's licensed out to some international company from an Indian company. We at Intas, we have a new chemical entity that we launched in India. Now we are taking to the global markets. There are multiple companies working on new innovative products, and those products are going to create huge value for the country. The way a country's economics changed completely with one GLP, one product that was launched in that particular country. The macroeconomics of the country changed completely. You will be knowing this.
Yeah, you're talking about the insulin drug, right?
No, I'm talking about a follow-on product, which is, semaglutide.
Yes.
That was launched in a country. It became so big because it was for obesity and it was for diabetes
right.
together.
Yeah.
And it was adopted so beautifully that, it created a big, market.
Sure. So you're saying that Indian companies are now have access to capital, access to talent. Those are not barriers anymore?
Absolutely. I think capital is available in plenty.
Sure.
There's a lot happening in the country. If you see next decade is going to come from the novel pharmaceutical products. So venture capitalists, PE funds, everybody started getting interested. Contract research companies are working very well because, part of the research and development is done in the country.
These are called CDMO companies. Everybody on Dalal Street is going crazy about them, right?
Absolutely. I think CDMO, contract clinical research is another big area. So I would say that, capital is not a problem. Capital is not a problem at all.
So then, okay. So you're saying that, therefore, if you look at the next 3 to 5 years, you could have a very large pharmaceutical company that's globally known. Of course, they are already, but known for beyond generics. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. Companies like Intas, we are spending a lot of money on research and development.
Sure.
And maybe it's our company that will come with the product, which is going to be a global product. We have a lot of confidence and promise in that new chemical entity that we are developing. It has excellent results. In India, we have already had 150, 200,000 patient exposures. So it's fantastic.
So what would help this audience understand what you're talking about is to talk about the disease, because ultimately every individual understands the impact of a disease either for themselves or their loved ones. So give us an example of a disease and give us an example of a formulation that perhaps your company is currently working on. Maybe it's in clinical trials, or maybe it's already succeeded and you've managed to make maybe a biosimilar or maybe a new formulation.
Yeah, I think for this new chemical entity, if you are talking about, Alex, it is for mania and bipolar disorder. There are limited options available in this space. The options that we have today, it has serious side effects. So as a result, this particular entity that our scientists developed, it is working exceedingly well. And we are doing a lot of clinical work. In multi-centric clinical trials are right now happening. And we're very confident that this will be one of the new chemical entity in future available for global population.
Interesting. Okay, but when you study a geography, like when you study India, for example, and you're a global manufacturing company, you cater to various countries in the world. But if you look at our demographic, then our demographic has a tendency towards certain diseases, right? There are lifestyle diseases, there are chronic diseases. There is now a higher incidence of cancer in various parts of the world, particularly in our country as well. As a pharmaceutical company, when you're in the research and development space, how do you look at incidence of these diseases to get ahead of the curve and cure it? And would you agree that the pharmaceutical industry, by and large, by its very design, is reactive rather than ahead of the curve?
I think very, very good question. There are two parts of answers to this question. It's a long one. You talked about cancer. So cancer cell is very unknown. It's not completely known. So a lot of research is happening in the cancer area, and we at Intas, we are working on, delivering these cancer products, cancer therapies, in a very, very different way. So we are working on a technology called nanoparticle technology. We use lipids, and we coat lipids, and use this technology to deliver this product with, with reduced side effects of a chemotherapy drug. That's one. Second is multiple companies, including ours, are working on immunotherapies. And these are targeted therapies that work on cancer cells. The other areas of growth for us is, we're looking at cancer in a very, very different way, because oncology was the first big subject for Intas to work on. We worked on cancer. We built up a lot of products on cancer. We looked at technologies. We improved technologies. Now we're looking at biologics. How do we make sure that we have those biologics at affordable costs for the patients? So yes, I think a lot of work is happening. We're working on, monoclonal antibodies. We're working on, antibody drug conjugates. We are working on bispecific, trispecific, multispecific monoclonal antibodies. I think the area is tremendous.
Sir, I have a confession to make. Whenever I am reporting on a pharmaceutical company and there is a formulation that they've gotten approval for, it is an abbreviated new drug application, which is called ANDA, right? But I choose to not read it because it's so complicated, and I tend to slip up on it. I'm pretty sure you've got a lot of practice. What's the toughest one that you've ever seen?
See, products, those are...
No, sir, you have to give us the name of a formulation that you think is challenging, and maybe we can do a game later and make people in the audience try and say it.
Yeah, there are lots of complex formulations.
Like an example?
Yeah. So for example, semaglutide, for example, if you have to manufacture semaglutide, the bioavailability of a tablet is very, very low. Whereas injectables are relatively easier to make. So the science has to be sharp. There'll be risk of failure. You have to stand up and run again next day. There'll be huge investments required. And, you should have patience, deep pockets, desire, resolve, and, eventually it is successful.
Okay. Now, the last part of this, and I do want to get an answer from you, which is affordability, right? And you talked about cancer, you talked about the fact that you're doing a lot of work in oncology. Availability of drugs at an affordable rate is absolutely critical in our country, particularly with the per capita where it is, and with the incidence of these illnesses. Is the Indian pharmaceutical industry capable of making drugs at scale and drugs at an affordable price and drugs that are new?
Absolutely. I have no doubts. Like, look at the pricing that is offered in India. Like when most of my friends, when they come to India, they take all the medication and go back home. For India, there's no debate on this. We are the country offering best science and the cheapest product available. When you go to the international markets, we have a similar approach. We do science, we do research and development in a very, very focused way. We use technologies in research and development. We do speed. Intas has 3 R&D centers. One is in US, one in UK, and one in India. We use different time zones to make sure the speed is high. And, we finally, when we're successful, we file, we get an approval. Once we get an approval, we make sure that the pricing of the product is in such a way that more and more and more people can adopt.
We've been speaking about the use of new technology, artificial intelligence. There's a lot of debate about the use of artificial intelligence in the healthcare space for doctors and the way that they look at patients and analyze. I'm just wondering if there are applications in the pharmaceutical industry.
Absolutely. I think in pharmaceutical industry, the mundane kind of work that is very repetitive.
Like, for example?
Like, analytics, like, gene editing, like, rapid testing. And when you have 500 samples to test, you can rapidly do using AI models.
So the time taken to create new formulations, for example, can be reduced with
Absolutely.
AI.
Absolutely. Today, from bench to the bedside of a patient, development of product can take up to a decade or more.
Right.
Because this is, this is a very, very serious business. So with these technologies, you can reduce it by 30 to 40%.
Last question, sir. Right now, 50 to 55 billion dollars the size of the Indian pharmaceutical industry. Where do you see it in 10 years' time?
Yeah, we have set ourselves an objective of $450 billion as a country
By?
by 2047.
Okay.
That is something that everybody is looking at. And I would say that core business will be their generics.
Yeah.
But the growth is going to come from these three areas. Growth is going to come from biologics, biosimilars, personalized medicines like cell and gene therapy, and complex injections and formulation.
Fantastic. Please, big round of applause for Mr. Rakesh Bamzai. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Do stay.